And welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. It's another podcast. Yeah, it's our official third episode of the podcast, and it is Friday. It's it's whenever you're actually listening to this, but it's Friday by the time I'm recording this. So I'm gonna say it's Friday. It's Friday. It's the end of the week, and it is the first. It's the third official podcast, but it's the first podcast for me anyway, where it's actually the thing I wanted to talk about, which is movie news. So, a little victory for me. So, before I get to any of the movie news, I do want to mention I think I finally figured out what I want to do with the podcast. So, Friday today, the end of the week podcast will be this. It will be talking about some of the big movie news, or the biggest news items, at least in my mind, that have come out. Give my opinion on them, as one does on a podcast. And I will also be talking about the movies that are coming out today and this weekend, so all you guys can enjoy. And I was thinking that Monday's podcast will eventually be, or the beginning of the week podcast, I don't know if I'm actually going to be putting it up on Monday or if it goes up on Tuesday. But it's going to be at the beginning of the week. So the idea that I had for the beginning of the week podcast, let's just call it that, is a review podcast. It will be the reviews of the movies that I watched over the weekend. It's usually 2 movies that I watch over the weekend, so it will be a good podcast because it'll be 2 movie reviews. But also, I'll talk about a little bit over some movie news that came out after I recorded the podcast, or it came out over the weekend, which isn't usually a ton. It's not usually a lot, but every once in a while, a studio will release a pretty decent news item. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And I will open up the podcast to you guys, the listeners, the maybe 6 listeners that I have. I'm just making fun of myself at this point. But yeah, I kind of want to open it up to you guys, since the beginning of the week podcast will probably be shorter compared to the end of the week podcast, because it's just going to be really probably most likely just reviews, which isn't that bad. But I want to open up to you guys. I want to make you guys more part of the show, even if it is very few listeners. And I didn't do the podcast for the listeners. I didn't do it for the numbers. I did it because it's something that I wanted to do. So don't take that as, the wrong way. But I do want to, make you guys more involved. Eventually I'll have more people on the podcast. Right now I'm still trying to find the footing just for my own. Just to have my own footing, and just to have the podcast, set up and have it, have some good legs under it before I bring more people in. So that's the idea. So the idea is to have you guys, send in questions, whether it be in the comment section, whether, you know me personally. So, I'm pretty sure most of the people listening to this podcast know me personally or have me on Facebook. So, if you want to send me a question to the comment section when I link it over there, or through a message, I'll answer it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be movie related. It can be whatever. Maybe we'll make the podcast, we'll make the beginning of the week podcast, half movie related and half, maybe getting to know me better. I don't know. You can send me whatever question. It'd be cool if it was a movie question, but it doesn't have to be a movie question. It can be whatever you want. It's just something to get you guys more involved in the podcast. So that's the plan. Beginning of the week podcast will be reviews, whatever news items happen to come out, and opening it up to you guys. A kind of open forum, as if that's what you want to call it. And then, of course, the end of the week podcast, which will come out on Friday, will be all the movie news that's come out throughout the week. Well, not all the movie news. The big news items that came out, and talking about the movies that are coming out in theaters. That will be the way the podcast is structured. And if anything big happens, like Marvel decides to, or Disney decides to, release Marvel from its contract, which will never happen. But something big like that. Something big happened in the middle of the week, I will try to record at least a little something and give it out to you guys. So, all right. So that's what I was thinking. That's kind of how I finally figured out what I wanted to do. So let's get to the movie news. I briefly mentioned the Dark Tower adaptation movie that's coming out on the last podcast. I kind of zoomed past it only because the news had just come out when I was recording the podcast. So I wanted to go back a little bit and just a little bit and dive in a little bit more into kind of what was actually in the news item. The Dark Tower, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Dark Tower, is a comic / graphic novel. It's a series that Stephen King wrote. And it's a bit hard for me to talk about personally because I've only read one of them, which was the very first book. And I've been wanting to read The Dark Tower for years. And now I have a bigger reason to, especially with the news item that I will drop in a little bit. But I have a bigger reason. But from the first one that I read, I really liked it. I thought it was great. The illustrations were really awesome. So I'm looking forward to the Dark Tower adaptation, especially since the Dark Tower is one of those movies that I have been following for years. Because when I first really started getting into reading, kind of, let's just say the news cycle, for the lack of a better word, the movie news cycle, The Dark Tower was one of those movies that was the first kind of real big news item that I read. It was Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, which finally came out after all these years. The Lone Ranger at the time was also a really big news item. And The Stand, which is also a Stephen King adaptation, which is also getting a movie. And we'll talk about that more once more movie news actually comes out for The Stand. But The Dark Tower has always been one of those projects that every once in a while, there'll be something, and I'll be like, they're still trying to make that movie. Like it's one of those projects where I'm like, it's Stephen King, obviously a very respected writer, and it's one of these projects that is just hearing other people talk about it, because I have had friends who have read the Dark Tower series, and they say it's excellent. They're actually the ones that recommended it to me. So hearing them talk about the Dark Tower, knowing a little bit of what it's about, and just seeing the potential from that first story that I read, it is primed for the big screen or even the small screen. There was an ambition with Ron Howard, who was originally set to direct, that he wanted to do 3 movies and then do 2 miniseries in between the movies and put them on TV. And I thought that was really ambitious. I thought for especially now with the way that TV is becoming the go-to entertainment, one of the go-to entertainment viewings. I could have structured that better, but I think you know what I mean. It's better. It's a better idea now than it was. I think it was like 4 years ago when this project was the ambition of the project was first announced. I think it's a better idea now to do that, but I don't know if they're actually still going to do that. But let's get to the actual news item. I wanted to describe what the Dark Tower was. The Dark Tower follows a character called Roland Deschained, which will be played by Idris Elba, who is the last living member of a knightly order called the Gunslingers in a place called Midworld. And his obsession is to get to the fabled The Dark Tower. But of course he meets people along the way, like the villain that will be in this movie, the Man in Black, aka Walter Paddock, aka Randall Flagg, which if you're familiar with Stephen King books, Randall Flagg is a character that appears in many of his books. And it's one of those things where it's, there's that theory, or it's not really a theory, it's kind of accepted now by the fans that every Stephen King book is connected. And The Dark Tower, I believe one of my friends said that more characters from Stephen King books appear or are hinted at in The Dark Tower stories. But again, I haven't read them, so I don't know. But anyway, the news item that came out was that Idris Elba will be playing Roland Deschained, and Matthew McConaughey will be playing the Man in Black, aka Randall Flagg, aka Walter Paddock. So that's the big news item. But the other part of the news item that I didn't get to read in the last podcast was that Stephen King By the way, this was an interview with Entertainment Weekly with Stephen King and the director of the movie, Nikolaj Arcel, who directed A Royal Affair. So that was the interview. I think it's up on Entertainment Weekly. I don't know if they just released this tidbit, but I'm sure it'll be up. I'm sure it's up. I didn't check. I'm a bad host for not checking. But anyway, Stephen King confirmed that the film will begin in the middle of the story, but will encompass the entire storyline that fans have come to love over the years. Meanwhile, Arcel mentioned that the film is set to begin shooting in 2 months in South Africa for its January 13th, 2017 release date. Now, that's a really tight deadline, and, release dates nowadays aren't really inked in for the most part. They usually get, bumped up a week or pushed back a week or whatever. But the January 13th release date, I mean, it's possible, but if the film continues to cast members and bring in these talented people and they really do a really quick shoot with no problems, then they'll probably be in good shape and it can be done. But it is nothing is ever perfect, so maybe they'll push back the release date. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But as for the casting, I like Elba. I like everything he does. And Matthew McConaughey as a full-blown villain, I mean, come on, that's got to be kind of cool to see. So I just hope that, I'm hoping and I'm finally happy that The Dark Tower, after all the delays and false starts, is finally going to get off the ground. All right, so a couple quick news items. I'm just going to briefly talk about these and we'll move on to the bigger ones. Bennett Miller is going to direct a Christmas Carol adaptation. How about that? Another Christmas Carol adaptation. If you're looking for another one, here it is. He last directed Foxcatcher. He also directed Moneyball. And the only thing we know about this project is that it's set in the 19th century. That's the only thing we know. But if we follow Miller's career, he likes to follow these kind of troubled, for the lack of a better word, they're troubled in one way or another, lead characters. So maybe we'll see a different version of Scrooge. Who knows? J.K. Rowling, aka the author of one of the biggest books ever written, Harry Potter, confirms that Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the movie that's coming out later this year, will be a trilogy. We kind of already knew that it was going to be a trilogy, but we didn't know this part. She said in a tweet, of all things, that the film is the film Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is the first act of a trilogy, and that's a new bit of information that we didn't know. So we live in an era of tent poles and franchises and sequels and trilogies and stuff like that. This is kind of the first time we're actually hearing that Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is the first act of a trilogy. So, it looks like the story will be, we'll be going full circle at some point. And you don't know what Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is about. It is set 70 years before the events of Harry Potter. So it's for the lack of a better word, a prequel. And the main character follows Newt Scamander. Sorry, Harry Potter fans, if I'm saying that wrong. Who's played by Eddie Redmayne. He's a magizoologist who goes to New York City to contain all the magical beasts, hence the title, that have escaped from his briefcase and are running, all over the city in a very kind of anti-magic America. And on his ventures, he meets people. He meets allies and he meets not so friendly people. So we have a teaser out there. We don't have a full trailer, which I'm imagining we'll probably get sometime in the summer. That's just my guess. But yeah. So Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them will also star, besides Eddie Redmayne, Catherine Waterstone, Colin Farrell, Alison Soldal. I think that's pronounced her last name. Pretty sure I butchered that. Dan Fogel, Ezra Miller, Ron Perlman, and Jon Voight, and will be coming out in November 18th. The Hoff. That's right, boys and girls. The Hoff. David Hasselhoff is going to be making a cameo of some sort in the new Baywatch movie. That's right. If you didn't know there was a Baywatch movie, you do now. The movie will be rated R and will be directed by Seth Gordon, who directed Horrible Bosses, and will be led by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Zac Efron. Johnson will play a by-the-books lifeguard, while Efron will play a hot-headed lifeguard who have to team up to stop an oil tycoon from ruining the beach. I am not kidding. That is what the movie's about. It's Baywatch. I mean, come on. Seriously, it's Baywatch. So yeah, David Hasselhoff, I almost said his name wrong. David Hasselhoff is going to make a cameo of some sort. I know they were trying to get Pamela Anderson, but she's very wishy-washy about appearing in it or not, but whatever. I mean, it's David Hasselhoff. I mean, he owes his career to Baywatch, let's be honest. I mean, Knight Rider. Yeah, okay, Knight Rider. But, he's not shy about kind of, poking fun of himself a little bit for the role from time to time, so that's nice. So, yeah, he's going to be appearing in it. Other people that are going to be appearing in the Baywatch film are Alexandra Daddario. She was in the first season of True Detective and San Andreas. She's already worked with The Rock. Also appearing are Hannibal Buress, Pietra Tropa from the ABC show Quantico, and Kelly Rollbach. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your last name right. She's a Sports Illustrated model. So, there you go. Alright. The Flatliners remake. Yes, there's a remake of Flatliners. Get over it. I'm not against remakes. We'll probably end up talking about that on the podcast at some point. You want to ask me about remakes for the Monday show? Or the beginning of the week show? Go ahead. So the Flatliners remake is happening. They already have Ellen Page set to star. Ellen Page, of course, she played Kitty Pryde in the X-Men, actually not the last X-Men movies, that's not even right. She played Kitty Pryde in X-Men The Last Stand and in Days of Future Past, so she was in the last X-Men movie. Yeah, she was. All right. I was right. I just totally forgot. Anyway, the movie set to star Ellen Page and will be directed by Niels Arden Oplev. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his last name right, but he is a director of the Swedish version, aka the original version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And he also is the creator, and he directed, I believe, the first episode of USA's Mr. Robot. Not the creator, I'm sorry. He directed the first episode of Mr. Robot. He's set to direct. But now the rep is reporting that Diego Luna is in talks to join the film. If you're not familiar with Flatliners, the film, I believe even this one and the original, follows a group of medical students who experiment with near-death experiences that involve past tragedies until the dark consequences begin to jeopardize their own lives. The original film was directed by Joel Schumacher. Hey, you remember Joel Schumacher, right? Yeah. And it starred Kiefer Sutherland, Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon, William Baldwin, and Oliver Platt. However, the remake will be more of an international cast this time around, and it's said that the core cast will be following 3 women and 2 men this time. So, Diego Luna, for those of you guys that don't know who he is, he's actually been in quite a few films, both here in America and in Mexico. He's or just Spanish films in general. He's a great actor. He's one of those very underrated. He's not a big name, obviously, but he's one of those underrated actors that when he gets a chance to shine, he does it. So he's been in films like Y Tu Mama También. He was in Frida. He was in Dirty Dancing Havana Nights. Come on, guys, Dirty Dancing Havana Nights? No. Yeah, I didn't see it either. He was in Milk. He was in Contraband. He was in the Will Ferrell comedy Casa de Mi Padre, where he actually plays his brother. And Elysium, the Matt Damon movie. That's probably the big one where everyone kind of knows. He plays his best friend. He was also the lead voice in The Book of Life, which is a great, great movie. If you haven't seen The Book of Life, you should watch it. It's awesome. But even so, if you don't know him then I'm pretty sure more people will get to know him in soon. He's going to be in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is the prequel to. It's set in between. What is it set in between Episode 3 and 4, or 4 and 5? I don't even remember now. I should have wrote it down. I totally forgot. That's my fault. I'm a bad host. I'm sorry. But yeah, he's going to be in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and he's a great actor. If you see him in anything, if you get a chance to see any of his movies, he's great. So Diego Luna's going to star in Flatliners. As for the remake, I don't remember seeing Flatliners. I may have seen it, but I may have been too young to even remember watching it, so I have no real opinion about the Flatliners remake. So, if the cast is good or decent and it looks okay and it looks good, I'm gonna go watch it anyway. So there's that. This story just dropped today, right before I started recording. Bruce Willis is set to star in the Death Wish remake. The Death Wish remake has been kicking around Hollywood for a while. Joe Carnahan, the director of The Grey, Smoking Aces, Narc, he was attached for a while before 2013, where he was replaced by another director, and now he's been replaced by two other directors. The film will star Bruce Willis, as I mentioned, and will be directed by Big Bad Wolves directors. I'm going to pronounce these guys' names wrong. I'm just telling you that right now. Erhan Kashels and Navot Papashuto. I'm butchering that name. Just telling you that right now. The remake, for those of you guys who don't know, aren't familiar with the 1974 Charles Bronson-led film or the book that it was based off, it follows a mild-mannered architect who decides to take vengeance on the thugs who raped and murdered his wife and daughter. And the film, especially the Charles, there's sequels to the film, but there's every time you talk about Death Wish, it's always kind of the first one, and it's considered a cult classic by some, and even considered one of the biggest, dare I say, cornerstone revenge films. So I don't know if I've seen Death Wish. I don't think I have. I may have seen the sequel. I never saw the original one. Anyway, there's no word yet on when, on how, what kind of tone they'll take or what direction they'll bring in. So, and Bruce Willis, he's becoming one of those people that's really hit and miss, because he's one of those guys where, if he comes in and he's dedicated and he really takes the role seriously, he'll take it seriously. And then sometimes he's really just kind of phoning it in. And you can tell when he's phoning it in. But hopefully, he shows up and he really elevates the film to a point. The closest thing I think the closest thing I've seen to the actual original Death Wish, because now I remember I didn't see the original. I did see the sequel, which did not have Charles Bronson. And for the life of me, I can't remember who was the lead in it. Anyway, the closest thing I've seen to the original is Death Sentence, which was directed by James Wan and starred Kevin Bacon. That is really, that is, if you've never seen Death Wish, that's kind of what Death Sentence is, in a sense. So yeah, if you've seen Death Sentence, but you actually want to go back and watch Death Wish, go ahead. I'm going to watch the original just because, when I saw this news item, I was remembering that if I saw the original, I don't think I saw the original. I saw the sequel instead. I don't know why. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the Finding Dory trailer came out. Disney and Pixar released a new trailer for Finding Dory, which is, of course, a sequel to Finding Nemo. Andrew Stanton will come back to direct the film, which finds Dory being center stage this time. Obviously, the movie's named after her, so it's going to be about her. But she's on a quest to find her parents, which we briefly see in the trailer. And they tell her the line, we'll never forget you, which, right on the feels, Pixar. It sounded like I was doing something else. Never mind. Don't. I'll never do that again. But for what it was, the trailer looked it looked okay. I think it's been a while since we've kind of been in the world of Finding Nemo, but I'm sure kids will, parents and kids will drive out to go watch it. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It looks like it's gonna be fun. Hopefully it is. It's Pixar. You can't go too wrong with Pixar, except Cars. I'm looking at you, John Lasseter. That was your fault. But I'll go watch Finding Dory. Sorry, I'll go watch it. The voice cast includes the returning Ellen DeGeneres to voice Dory, Albert Brooks voicing Marlin once again, and it also includes new cast members like Ed O'Neill, Ty Burrell, Caitlin Olsen, Eugene Levy, and Diane Keaton. Finding Dory comes out on June 17th, later this year. I will put the trailer, or if you want to go look for it yourself, but I'm just helping you out, in the show notes / description area. Zack Snyder, the director of films like 300 and the upcoming Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, wants to make a 300 style George Washington movie. I am not kidding. Snyder was profiled on Bloomberg Business, and the profile the profile that they did on him wasn't that bad. It wasn't too bad of a read. So I mean, if you want to go watch it, I'll put the link down below in the description/show notes area. But yeah, he says he was interested in doing a 300 style George Washington movie, and here is the piece of what was said from Bloomberg Business, and there's a brief quote from Snyder in it as well. So here it goes. It says, meanwhile, Snyder is spending late nights in his office working on the upcoming Justice League movie. He's also thinking about making films that aren't comic book adaptations. Sort of. One of these days, he'd like to make one about George Washington in the style of 300. He has a picture in his office of the Revolutionary War hero crossing the icy Delaware on his way to decimate the British in the Battle of Trenton. We were talking about it, Snyder says. The first thing we asked was, well, how are we going to make it look? I pointed at this painting. It looks like 300. It's not that hard. So yeah, there you go. If you ever imagined or wanted a George Washington led action film in the style of 300, when he's crossing the icy Delaware in slow-mo, taking out British soldiers, you might get it. It sounds so ridiculous, but at the same time, I kind of want to watch it. I don't know what it is. It just sounds so ridiculous that you kind of have to watch it just to see if it's actually any good. I mean, look, if Snyder can, if he can pull it out and make it look awesome and make it work, more power to him. Honestly, more power to him. Will it happen? Should it happen is probably the main question. But will it happen? Who knows? Look, Snyder's got a busy plate ahead of him. He's directing Justice League. Who knows if Warner Brothers will bring him back to direct Justice League 2 or any other, movies in the DC cinematic universe. I mean, he's probably going to be burnt out after Justice League. I mean, he just directed Batman v Superman. He's going to direct Justice League soon. I mean, he's probably going to be burnt out. I don't think he wants to make another big action movie like this. So, I mean, if anything, if it ever does happen, the George Washington 300 style movie will at least look okay. It will at least look good. And the action scenes will be, decent. So, who knows what's going to happen. But, I mean, it's not... And here's the other thing. It's not totally out there now. Because it's not the same thing. Don't get me wrong. It'd be like, it's not the same thing, Chris. I know it's not. We got the Hamilton Broadway show, which is making waves. You had the John Adams show with Paul Giamatti not that long ago. And not regardless, that's not the word I want to use. I forgot the word I want to use. But nonetheless, two different concepts, and they're done in their own way. John Adams, I think I only watched the first episode. I didn't watch the rest of it. I only watched some of it. It was good. I just didn't get around to watching the whole thing. Was a serious piece. Hamilton, I've heard nothing but good things. I heard it's really fun and funny, but 300 style George Washington action movie. Just try to imagine that. I mean, there are worse films in the world than a George Washington 300 style action movie. Let's put it in that perspective. Again, if you want to read the whole profile from Zack Snyder on BloombergBusiness.com, I'll put the link down below as well. Let's move on. I don't know. Let's talk about another remake. Dario Argento's Suspiria. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I should have looked that up. It is considered by many a classic and one of the biggest cornerstones in the horror genre. Keep using cornerstones, and probably should have scripted this better. Whatever. It's my podcast. So a few years ago, the remake was going to happen with David Gordon Green. He's directed films like Pineapple Express, Your Highness, The Sitter, Joe, some episodes of Eastbound and Down, and more recently, Our Brand is Crisis. He was working on the remake, and many fans, more so than usual, especially for a horror remake, were really against it. They went into a real uproar about this movie getting remade. And of course, the film never happened for whatever reason. And David Gordon Green was replaced in September by a director, Luca. I'm going to mispronounce. There's a lot of mispronouncing of names here. Guadagnino, maybe, I don't know. He was set as the director for the film, and the plan was to start shooting in December, and it never happened. They missed the date. But at a recent Q&A with the director, he gave an update on the project that includes 2 stars that he wanted, a time, a setting, and who is the inspiration for the remake, or what director is inspiring him for the remake. Considering this was a Q&A when he was preparing his new film, A Bigger Splash, we should take this as a huge grain of salt. However, at the Q&A and where this news was taken from, it was taken from a writer who has written a book about Suspiria. And that's kind of lending some credence, I guess, because maybe he could have confirmed it with him. I don't know. But anyway, during the Q&A, he said that he wanted Tilda Swinton, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and Dakota Johnson to lead the film, adding that he planned on keeping the film loyal to the period, and it would be set in 1977 in Berlin, as opposed to the original that took place in another city. And it would be heavily influenced by a revered German director, Rainer Warren Fassbender, and it would hopefully be composed by John Adams, who is this very renowned composer, a minimalist composer at that. So that's the update he kind of gave. So before I get more, I wanted to tell you guys the original film. If you're not familiar, here's a synopsis of the original film. Because I read a description of the film, and it gave away, because I'd never seen it, so it gave away what it was. But I'm not gonna do that to you guys. So here's a synopsis for Suspiria. A newcomer to a fancy ballet academy gradually comes to realize that the school is a front for something far more sinister and supernatural amidst a series of grisly murders. So that's the official synopsis that I got from IMDb. I hadn't seen the original. I haven't seen it. I had never even heard of it before David Gordon Green said he was going to remake it, and I totally forgot about it until this news item came out. I've never seen it. I want to see it now because I've heard nothing but great things about it. And, a lot of people are still on the fence about it, but now with Tilda Swinton and possibly involved, everyone is kind of warming up to the idea now. Because Tilda Swinton's one of those actresses that if you put her in something that people are already on the fence about, they're probably going to go watch it, because Tilda Swinton is a fantastic, awesome actress, and anything she's involved in is pretty much great. That's a fair assessment, right? So they're on board if she comes on. Dakota Johnson may be the outlier, but I think some people are maybe warming up to her. Again, I could be wrong. She was in 50 Shades of Grey, although people say that she was the best part of 50 Shades of Grey, but no one really liked 50 Shades of Grey, so take that into account. I've only seen her personally in 2 things, and she had small roles in both of them. Need for Speed, which actually was a better movie than I thought it was going to be, and Black Mass. She has a very small role in Black Mass. But I haven't seen 50 Shades of Grey. I didn't see How to Be Single because it didn't look funny. It didn't look good. Who knows? Maybe Dakota Johnson, give her, if she's given the right property, maybe she'll surprise many people. Interestingly enough, all 3 of them, the directors, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name again, Swinton and Johnson have already worked together on A Bigger Splash, and Swinton has already worked with the director once before, even before A Bigger Splash, on a movie called I Am Love. So there's that connection, so maybe he can bring her on. They obviously enjoy working together, so we'll see what happens. He missed the winter start date, so we don't know, when he's going to start filming. There was no update on when he was. He didn't say when he was going to start filming. So, until the Swinton is in Doctor Strange, she's probably filming that right now. So we have to wait to see what's going on. I will keep you updated on the project, obviously, on the podcast. But so far, no Suspiria remake fans are happy for the time being. Let's move on. David Ayer is set to reunite with Will Smith, and actually he hasn't worked with Joe Edgerton, but Joe Edgerton is also involved in a fantastic cop thriller called Bright. So David Ayer, for those of you guys who don't know, he directed Fury. He's directing Suicide Squad right now, or they've already finished filming Suicide Squad, but he's finishing up Suicide Squad, post-production wise. He also directed Fury, directed Sabotage, he directed End of Watch, Street Kings, and Harsh Times. He's going to reunite with Will Smith, who, of course, stars as Deadshot in the Suicide Squad movie. They will be teaming up with Joe Edgerton on a film called Bright that was written by Max Landis, the son of the legendary director John Landis, but he's also written films like Chronicle and American Ultra and Victor Frankenstein. And there's no real big plot details on the movie except for the fact that it is a contemporary cop thriller with fantastical elements, whatever that may mean. So there's a bidding war going on right now. With those three already attached, I think they're going to find a studio soon. At least that's kind of what the feeling was when the report was written. And Ayer's becoming a big name. Slowly but surely he's becoming a big name. And with names like Will Smith, who is obviously, he was the king of the box office and he's kind of making a bit of a comeback, some can arguably say. And Joe Edgerton, who has done nothing but great things since he's kind of broken out in Hollywood. The film could be really good. And I think the only outlier and the wild card in all this is Max Landis. Look, Chronicle was awesome. We can agree on that. It was great. American Ultra was it was decent. It wasn't bad. And Victor Frankenstein was just terrible. It had some redeeming qualities about it, but overall it was underwhelming. It wasn't good. It wasn't, and it sucked because the good parts about it were really good, and then it just don't watch Victor Frankenstein unless you're really bored one day and you're like, you know what, I want to watch it. Then watch it, but just be warned, it's not that good. So I think it sounds good. Again, Landis is kind of like, the outlier here. He's really hit and miss, and you got Will Smith in there, you got Joe Edgerton in there, so you're gonna have a good, good leads. And David Ayer, again, he's becoming one of those big directors slowly but surely. I've enjoyed everything he's done except for Sabotage. Sabotage wasn't really that great, but it was a very David Ayer movie. And I'm not biased, by the way, because David Ayer is from Illinois. He's from Champaign. And not biased at all. But I've been following David Ayer for a long time. I loved Harsh Times, which is his first movie. Well, the first movie he directed. And I thought Harsh Times was great. It's one of those movies that no one either really knows or has heard about. But if you haven't watched Harsh Times, I recommend you watch it. It's Christian Bale. He's in the lead. He's the lead character in the movie. So watch Harsh Times. It's good. Speaking of David Ayer and Suicide Squad and Will Smith, Warner Brothers is already planning a Suicide Squad 2, and their plan is to start shooting next year. How about that? Again, we live in a world where tentpole movies and franchises and sequels and trilogies are all the rage, especially with comic book movies. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not, especially if those sequels, franchises, and temples are actually good. Sometimes they're not. So, but that's a whole other thing. So the idea is to start filming the movie next year, 2017, with the idea that the movie will come out probably in 2018 or 2019. Now, here's the thing. They've already announced a sequel. We haven't seen the movie yet. The movie doesn't come out until August 5th to be more exact. We haven't seen anything. We've seen the Comic-Con trailer and we've seen the second trailer. That's all we've seen. Obviously, the studio has seen more of the movie, and obviously they want to do a sequel. So everything that they've seen so far, maybe they've seen the whole thing already, they liked, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, this is good. I think people are gonna like this, and we're gonna get going on a sequel. And again, it's not a bad thing. Obviously, again, it's just the world we live in, but we haven't seen it. Fans haven't seen it yet. And I think fans haven't seen it yet, critics haven't seen it yet. We don't know how it's going to do at the box office just yet. You can't announce a sequel to a movie or sequels. I'm looking at you, Sony and Fox, with your Amazing Spider-Man Expanded Universe and Fantastic Four 2. Yeah, we didn't forget about that. We know that. I'm just, I'm looking at you guys. We can't get ahead of ourselves, especially with comic book properties, especially with those. I mean, again, I'm not saying Suicide Squad is going to suck. I'm not completely sold on it yet. That second trailer did a really good job on me, though. That second trailer they released was, in my opinion, better than the Comic-Con trailer, and got me more interested in watching the Suicide Squad movie. So I really enjoyed the second trailer. I thought it was better than I thought. If that is the only trailer I saw for if that trailer had come out first, I would have been. You know what? I'm excited for Suicide Squad. If that trailer had come out first, but it didn't. But yeah, we're working on Suicide Squad 2. I mean, again, I haven't seen the movie yet. None of us have. As we get closer to the release dates and we actually watch it, then, I'll come back and readdress whether or not it's a good idea. I know there's people out there that are really excited for it. I'm not so sold on it yet. All right, last news item of the day. We have the first trailer for Paul Feig's Ghostbusters. Yeah, came out yesterday, and it's being talked about. One way or another, it's being talked about. The film stars Melissa McCarthy, Kate McKinnon, Kristen Wiig, and Leslie Jones as the core cast in the new Ghostbusters. The film also stars Chris Hemsworth, Annie Garcia, Michael Kenneth Williams, Matt Walsh, Neil Cassie, and Cecilia Strong. And also have all the old cast members in Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Henson, who is very vocal about the film, and we'll get to that in a second, and Annie Potts and Sigourney Weaver, who will be making appearances in one form or another. Alright, so the trailer. The trailer itself. The trailer isn't that bad. It's not a great trailer, but it isn't that bad. And for me, I was never against the Ghostbusters remake. Again, I'm not against remakes. Maybe I'll just talk about remakes on the beginning week of the podcast next week. Anyway, the trailer, not the trailer, the movie, I was never against the movie. I wasn't. And I was never against the idea of having, a female-led Ghostbusters movie. There were a lot of people out there that were against the all-female Ghostbusters movie. I'm looking at you, Ernie Hudson. We all know it. You were very vocal about it. It's on the internet. I found it right away because I wanted to hear what you said. I wanted to read what you said again. A lot of people were against it. And there was a lot of, and I hate to say it, sexist comments about it. And it's weird because it's why does it matter? Really, honestly, why does it matter? But anyway, the movie, the trailer, just basing off the trailer, because obviously that's all we've seen. That's all any of us have seen. Just the trailer. The movie doesn't look that bad. It doesn't. And this is coming from me. This is coming from a guy that sees every angle and can see every angle from anybody, from both sides. For me, honestly, the trailer for the movie and the movie itself, again, basing just off the trailer, doesn't look that bad. But then again, we're seeing snippets of the movie in 2.5 minutes. That's it. That's all we're seeing. You can't be like, oh, this movie's gonna suck. You don't know that. You don't know that until you actually watch the movie. If you decide to watch the movie. You want to boycott the movie because it's all females and because the idea of a Ghostbusters remake, or reboot, that's what Paul Feig's classifying it as, is offensive to you and is going to ruin your childhood, then fine, don't go watch it. It's that simple. I didn't mind the trailer. I thought not all of the jokes, some of the jokes worked. That last bit at the end, for me personally, probably went a little bit too long, and hopefully, I don't know, maybe there's more to it. Probably not, because it looked like it was a sequence. But the last bit, I'll give you guys the last bit. The last bit, it just wasn't. It didn't work. But again, a movie, especially like Ghostbusters or any comedy movie, it's not going to give you every single good part. A comedy is not going to give you every single good joke in a trailer, because otherwise you'll know all the good jokes before you go watch a comedy, and then for that, why would you go watch it? action movies work a little differently because, studios want to get you in, they want to get you in the theater. And, comedies as well. But comedies, comedy and action movies are obviously very different genres. I know that. But at the same time, if you're going to go watch a comedy movie, you're not going to know every single big joke in it. Whereas opposed to an action movie, seeing the trailers, you're going to know maybe when a big action movie is going to happen, or action sequence is going to happen, or at least you're going to know, okay, this action sequence hasn't been in the movie yet, it's going to pop up soon. So, and again, I'm not against, I'm not, if you don't want to watch it, obviously I'm not going to say you're wrong. It's your opinion. You don't want to watch it, don't watch it. It's that simple. I thought the designs of the ghosts look pretty cool. There's Slimer's in there. There's a brief shot of him in the movie, or in the trailer. I'm sorry. So again, I know people are very vocal about it. It's one of those things where it's the time we live in, and Paul Feig he has said multiple times that he is going to honor and respect the spirit of the original movie. And I know what some of you guys will say, you can honor and respect it by just rewatching it. Here's the thing. We live in the age where things are going to get remade. Get over it. Just stop it. Just stop bitching, stop moaning. It's going to happen. And honestly, many will probably say, well, just watch the original. Yeah, guess what? You can watch the original. And you can watch a new version of it. And guess what? If you like the original, it's not going to go away. It's not going to disappear because a new version of it's coming out. It will always be there. That love that you have for the original is not going to go away because you watch the reboot of it. So settle down. Let's move on. The trailer again will be in the description / show notes area if you want to watch it. Ghostbusters comes out on June 15th. There you go. Alright, so let's get to this week's releases. We have 3 limited releases and we have 3 wide releases for your viewing pleasures. So let's start off with the limited releases first. We have Knight of Cups. Seriously, especially for Knight of Cups, when I mean limited, I mean very limited. I mean like 4 theater limited. So if you get a good chance to watch Knight of Cups, they're probably all in LA and New York. But I'm sure it'll come out a little more. We'll get an expansion later on. It's directed by Terrence Malick, so you know what you're getting into. If you've seen a Terrence Malick movie, you know what you're getting into. And it follows a writer indulging in all that LA and Las Vegas has to offer, and undertakes a search for love and self via a series of adventures and with 6 different women. Can't talk today. The cast includes Christian Bale, which I think he's the writer, and also includes Cate Blanchett, Natalie Portman, Frida Pinto, Isabel Lucas, Image Poots, Teresa Palmer, Antonio Banderas, and Wes Bentley. There's also a Norwegian film called The Wave, which has been making waves. I'm sad at myself. I hate myself for saying that. On the film festival circuits and in Norway, as it tells what could happen in Norway if a mountain pass, not even going to try to pronounce the name of it, collapses, which would cause a massive wave or tsunami from destroying everything in its way. But in all seriousness, the Wave has been making a lot of buzz since it's come out. So if you get a chance to watch it, go watch it. I'm going to try to watch it. I know it's also on on-demand video streaming services, but what's the other one? Not Netflix. I said video streaming services. I did say that. It's, you know what I mean. The other limited release movie compared to the wide releases, because it's only coming out in 500 plus theaters. The Other Side of the Door, which follows a mother after losing her son in a tragic accident, learns of a ritual that can bring him back so she can say goodbye. However, she disobeys a sacred warning and the one rule to the ritual and upsets the balance between life and death. And the film stars The Walking Dead's and USA's Colony's Sarah Wayne Callies and Jeremy Sisto. The movie looks okay. It looks spooky. I don't understand why they pushed it down. For a while it was going to get a big release, but they kind of pushed it down 500-ish theaters, but whatever. If it's good, it's good. I haven't heard any buzz around it yet, so that's just me because I haven't searched it out. So All right, so the wide releases. We have Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, directed by Glenn Ficarra and John Requa, who directed Focus, and is based on the book. Both of them directed Focus, the Will Smith, Margot Robbie movie. And this movie is based on the book by Kim Barker called The Taliban Shuffle Strange Days in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and follows a journalist, Kim Barker, as she recounts her wartime coverage in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The cast includes Tina Fey, who plays Kim Barker, Margot Robbie, Martin Freeman, Alfred Molina, Christopher Albott, Josh Charles, and Billy Bob Thornton. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot looks kind of funny. It looks pretty funny. It's getting good reviews, and I'm gonna probably see it this weekend, if not during the week. So maybe expect either a full-blown review or a mini review. The next movie is London Has Fallen, of course, the sequel to Olympus Has Fallen, and follows Mike Banning and President Asher as they go to London for the Prime Minister's funeral, but get sucked into an international assassination plot from a dangerous terrorist. Of course, the cast brings back Gerard Butler, Aaron Eckhart, Rhonda Mitchell, Angela Bassett, Melissa Leo, and Morgan Freeman, and includes new cast members Jackie Earle Haley and Alan Ababul. I think I'm pronouncing his last name right. Probably not. In my case, probably not. London Has Fallen doesn't look that bad. I mean, I wasn't, we weren't cramming for a sequel to Olympus Has Fallen, but, I mean, whatever. I mean, it looks like a decent, fun action movie. I mean, is it going to be any good? I don't know. The reviews haven't been so awesome. But again, I don't listen to reviews, so it doesn't matter. If I want to go watch a movie, I'm going to watch a movie. So, yeah, there you go. And Gerard Butler, I mean, he needs a good box office movie. Because I saw Gods of Egypt yesterday. Oh my God, it was terrible. Don't watch Gods of Egypt. If you already watched it, I feel we can feel sorry together. It was not a good movie. Don't watch Gods of Egypt. Anything to take away from the podcast, the fact that I can't pronounce completely foreign names, it's also don't watch Gods of Egypt. Alright, so the final film is Zootopia, the Disney animation movie set in a city and world where animals exist and talk and work together. And it follows a con artist Fox, voiced by Jason Bateman, teams up with a rookie bunny cop, voiced by Jennifer Goodwin, to crack a case that might uncover a conspiracy. The voice cast, is pretty. It's pretty stellar. It's a pretty good voice cast. We got Idris Elba in there. We got Jenny Slate, Bonnie Hunt, Tommy Chong, J.K. Simmons, Octavia Spencer, and Shakira, and a few other people in there as well. Zootopia looks good. And the reviews, again, I don't listen to the reviews, but the reviews have been really positive for Zootopia. I think even the numbers are suggesting that Zootopia can be a record box office breaker for not just Disney, but just the whole month of March. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, there you go. The wide releases, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, London Has Fallen, and Zootopia. Your limited releases, if you can find it in your local theaters, are Knight of Cups, The Wave, and The Other Side of the Door. All right, so I want to do a little game here. It's not a big deal. It's not completely awesome, but it's just fun to kind of pass the time. So box office predictions. That's what I want to do. I'm not an expert. I don't follow the numbers. I'm not a big numbers guy, but it's just a fun little thing that we can do. And maybe once we get more situated and we get more people involved, maybe we'll make a fun little game about it. But for now, it's just passing and killing the time. So the box office predictions. I'm gonna try to predict the top 5 box office movies. Last week, starting from number 1, going down to number 5, Deadpool, Gods of Egypt, Kung Fu Panda 3, Risen, and 999. So that was last week's podcast. Last week's box office. So this week's box office, my predictions are Zootopia. Obviously, I think that's going to be everyone's number 1 pick. I do think that maybe London Has Fallen will pick up the action fans, and they'll go watch it number 2. Although I could see it going to number 3, but I will stick. No, you know what? I want to say London Has Fallen is number 3, and number 2 will be Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. That's right. I'm switching it up. I'm switching up from whatever I already wrote. So Zootopia is number 1, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot number 2, London Has Fallen will be number 3. I think Deadpool will stay in the top 5 at number 4. Maybe it beats out London Has Fallen. And number 5 will be either Risen or 999. Maybe Risen. Maybe a little bit more Risen. I think people are doubting that there are films, kind of religious films that, religious films, especially over the last few years, are becoming like having a lot of willpower and a lot of strong power. They're making it to that top 5. There is an audience there, which is nice. Religious people should go watch movies too. That sounds like a weird statement to say, but maybe it sounds weird because it's something that we don't usually talk about. But yeah, so my top 5 for this week, my predictions for the top 5 anyway: Zootopia, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, London Has Fallen, Deadpool. Maybe London Has Fallen and Deadpool will switch places, but that's the order I'm going with right now. And Risen. So that's my top 5. All right, that's it, everybody. That's the podcast this week. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to stay up to date on the movie news and get a preview on what we're going to talk about on the podcast, you can like us on Facebook, or like me on Facebook, at themoviepit.com or facebook.com/themoviepit. I will put a link down below so you guys can give us a like over there. If you want to get also a heads up on the reviews that I will be reviewing on the podcast, you can like me on my WordPress account. Again, I will put a link down below. Check out the trailers for Finding Dory and Ghostbusters in the description and show notes down below, and for Zack Snyder's profile with Bloomberg Business. And again, if you want to be a part of the show for the Beginning of the Week podcast, let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about, whether it be movie news related or anything else. No politics, no religion, please. I am not savvy in either one of those. Actually, I just don't want to talk about religion. And politics, I'm not very savvy in. So there's that. But yeah, so if you want to ask me a question to be a part of the podcast, you can leave it down below in the comments, or if you know me personally, again, Facebook. And yeah, so give us a like, give me a follow, and I hope you enjoy this week's podcast of The Movie Pit. And until next time, guys, thanks for listening, and have a good weekend.